What's going on, guys? On this episode of Into the Woodshop, we're going to be talking about making a one-piece wooden pen from a Slimline pen kit. If that's something that you're interested in, then stay tuned here on this video. If it's not, then go check out the channel, check out our playlist. I'm sure you'll find something to keep yourself entertained. And for now, let's get going on this video. On this episode of Into the Woodshop, we are going to do a pen turning video, and we're going to be using oak. I've already cut down my blank for the pen right here, and we're going to do a one-piece pen. It's kind of a cheat on a Slimline pen kit, or at least the one that we're going to be doing. Now, this is going to be my second one. The first one, I made a couple of mistakes, and I think that I learned from those enough to be able to walk you guys through this. So first thing that we're going to need to do is drill a hole all the way through this blank. This is a little over twice the size that you would normally have your blanks. It's about 1/4 inch longer than the two brass bushings, and then that extra compensates for the little bushing that goes in between those two wood pieces. Typically, we're not going to use that, so we need to have that extra space in the wood. First thing, like I said, we need to drill all the way through this pen blank. Now, I do not have a long enough drill bit to accomplish this feat, so we're going to put the blank into the chuck on the lathe, drill in from one side, and then flip the blank around and drill in from the other side to meet it. So we're going to need to mark our centers perfectly so that we can drill in at the right spot, so that we don't have holes that conflict with each other. Alright, so let's get this thing onto the lathe and we'll get going. So as you can see there, as I was drilling in, I kept backing up the drill bit so that we can clean out all the garbage that builds up in there so we don't burn our hole, as well as so we don't push the grain out too much. So now we're going to get this flipped around and do the other side. Alright, we have made it all the way through our blank, so we'll just pull this guy off. Make sure, yep, we got our hole all the way through. So now we'll get this prepped the rest of the way so we can bring it back to the lathe, put it on the mandrel, and go to town. Okay, so now like I said, in a normal pen blank situation, you would have, on a Slimline pen kit, you'd have two wood blanks, and you would glue both brass bushings into that blank. We are not going to do that on this. Instead, we're going to glue one into here, and it is going to be on the top of the pen, the non-writing end of the pen. So we just need to figure out which side we want the non-writing end to be. I think I want it to be this side here. All the grain looks like it'll be going good there. So let's go ahead and glue this up. So this is the brass bushing that we're going to glue in, and so first thing we're going to do is get it roughed up on some sandpaper. This is a very important step. Make sure that your glue sets. The way these brass bushings come, the way these brass tubes come, they're very smooth. So you just want to rough them up a little bit. All right, there we go. So now we're ready to glue that up. Get a glue block out here. Okay, so we're going to use some medium CA to glue this tube in place. So we'll get it applied here, and then we'll make sure we twist, and we'll kind of insert it a couple of times, make sure that it gets all the way in there, and then we will recess it just slightly within the blank there. Use the edge of our glue block Wipe off any excess CA. Make sure that we're straight in there. Looking good. So we'll wait for that to dry, and while we do, we'll prep the other brass tube. Okay, now I've got the pen kit selected that I'm going to use, and I have the other brass tube here. And what we're going to do is we're going to insert the tip of the pen into this brass tube. Now I've got my drill press set up with a little push block here, and then my glue block, so I can come in here and use this as a press, because I do not currently have a pen press. So we'll get this pen tip seated in here. Got it there. Remove this little block. Now we'll get our mechanism pressed in place. We'll go down just past the little copper part, and we'll test that out. Okay, we need to go a little bit further. That pen tip just isn't quite sticking out enough there. So we'll push it a little bit more. There we go. I think that'll be enough for us here. We'll get that reinserted. There we go. That's perfect. Alright, so now our mechanism tube is set up. This tube, again, is not going to get glued in. So what you can see is that when I hold on to the end of this here, which this will be shoved into the other brass tube inside the wood, this will all be inside the wood, and then you rotate the tip and the ink is exposed. So that is how we're going to use the mechanism. Instead of turning the two halves of the pen, you're going to turn the tip of the pen to have your ink tip exposed. Okay, I think our blank glue is all dried up, and the brass is seated in there well. And I have an extra brass tube that I am going to insert into this side, because this hole is larger than the mandrel and can cause for a little bit of wobble on there. So if I insert an extra brass tube, then I don't have to worry about as much play going on in there. Okay, and so now I just set this onto the mandrel, place my bushings, lock it down, and go to town. There we are. Bring up the tailstock. Get her inserted in there. Lock down. Get a test spin. Looks good. We'll bring up our tool rest. Alright. I think we're good to go. Now the tools that I might be using for this project is going to be a roughing gouge, a skew chisel, and a medium spindle gouge. I don't think that I'll end up using anything else for this present project. So now we just need to remember that the glued side is our top end of the pen, and the loose side is where the nib is going to go. So we just need to remember that we're turning towards the left in our setup here. Now, as to not to bore you, I'm going to speed this video up here. Okay, so there you have it. And we got our basic shape down. So we'll start the sanding process. There we go. So we've gone through the grits: 150, 240, 320, 400, and 600 grits. Now we are going to apply a finish to this. I'm just going to do a basic CA finish. First thing that I like to do before I start my finish is to hit the whole thing with some acetone. Just make sure that there's no dust, as well as cleans up those bushings on the sides. Make sure that there's no buildup on them that will end up bringing across the rest of the pen as we do our finish. Okay, now we'll start with a thin CA. This is just Starbond's thin CA. Do real quick shots on the CA. And then after each application, I'll cut off the part that I've just, the part of the paper towel that I've just got the CA on, and that way I end up saving as much of my towel as possible, only getting rid of this much at a time instead of a whole piece every time. Apply second coat. Get that cut off. Now we'll go ahead and apply, usually I do about 6 to 8 coats of thin CA, so we'll speed up through that. So now we've run through our thin CA, and we'll move on to a medium CA. Did 8 coats of thin, and we'll do about 8 to 10 coats of medium. Make sure you're in a well-ventilated area when you're using this stuff. I've got all my fans on and my dust collection unit here, all running, getting those fumes pushed away from me. Okay, so we still have our pen blanks set up here in the lathe. We've got, let's see, we did 8 coats of thin CA, 9 coats of medium CA to get up to the thickness that I thought that would work best for this piece. Now we're going to hit it with some 400 and 600 grit on the wet sand, and then I got my micro mesh out, and we'll go through all 9 of the micro mesh to polish it up. Now hitting it with this 400 and 600 grit sandpaper is just to get rid of all the high spots in the CA finish, and then we'll go through all of the micro mesh to polish it up. I'll run my fingers over the top of it just to feel the grooves, and I can see where it needs a little bit more work and where it's smooth enough. Getting real close with the 400 here. If you take your time with the lower grits, then you blow through the higher grits really quickly. You should only have to be removing the scratches from the previous grit once you hit the first grit of the micro mesh. Not applying too much pressure, just allowing the sandpaper and the lathe to do the work. There we go, I'm pretty happy with that. I'll move on to the 600 grit. There we go, that feels good. haven't even started the micro mesh, and that feels real nice right there. Again, we'll go through all 9 grits. You get that little slurry buildup on the first few grits of the micro mesh. Shouldn't happen after the 3rd or 4th micro mesh. If it does, you're putting too much pressure on there. And so now we're just removing the previous grits, grooves and marks. You can see here on the, second to last, third to last, there's no slurry building up on the micro mesh. That's exactly what you want. There we go. I'm really liking that. That finish is looking really nice. Okay, I'm going to hit this pen with the buffing wheel. There we go. That's really nice. Okay, she's ready to come off. So we'll release the mandrel. We'll pull off our bushings. Remove the pen. Okay, so you can see when we first pull it off the lathe, it has these little, this little bit of CA that built up and went over the edge. Some people call that the fingernails. So we're going to put a little bit of sandpaper to this, a little bit of probably 600 grit will do the trick, just to get that down to flush where it's supposed to be. If you try to do anything else with it other than just a little bit of light sanding, then sometimes you'll chip your CA finish back from the top, and we don't want that. I'm just spinning this as I go, rotating the pen blank. There we go. And now that that's all cleaned up, the little brass tube on the inside comes out. Okay, so it's a little bit unique. We just have wood right here, no brass tube. And remember, this is the one that was in there while we were turning it, and now that that has been removed, there's no brass tube in this section here. So now it's time for final assembly. Okay. So now we're back over here at the drill press. We got our pen and our end cap ready to be pressed into place. So we're just going to get it started here. Remember, we're pressing this into the brass tube side. So get it started there, and then we can figure our final alignment, which I think is going to be right about there. Set it back in, press that the rest of the way. There we go. Okay, so now all that's left is putting the nib and the mechanism and that other brass tube in place, and then we'll have a completed pen. Okay, so now we have our pen straight off the lathe with our end cap and clip mounted in place and pressed into place. We have our brass tube with the nib and the turning mechanism installed with our ink already in, and now we will go ahead and press this into place. So basically we're just pushing that that turning mechanism into the brass tube that is already installed and glued in place in the wood, and there you go, a perfect fit. And so now all you have to do is turn the nib and your ink is ejected. lighting in the shop over here is pretty horrible. I'm going to go ahead and bring you onto the lathe again so that you can take a closer look. So there she is, all completed. Got a nice fit around the nib. And then you just turn that nib and your ink is ejected straight out. Yeah, a fun little way to take a Slimline pen kit and create a single piece pen body from it. Alright guys, hopefully you enjoyed this episode of Into the Woodshop here on the Path of Life. If you did, hit that thumbs up button. Don't forget to subscribe so you can be apprised when we come out with more videos, and also share this out with your friends. Thank you so much everybody. Until next time, take care of yourselves and make it a great day. Peace out.